The handle just kicked itself. You didn't do anything. It just stopped. The tank isn't even full yet. There's room left inside. So why did it cut off? One spark from a fireball. That's what this little click is actually preventing. This used to happen constantly. Attendants overflowed tanks all the time. Gas running down the side of the car. The ground was the proof. Pavement stained dark. Puddles nobody thought twice about. Gearheads channel. Nobody explained the click for decades, and almost nobody asked. Questions that sound simple and turn out not to be are the whole business of the smart side. Here's the thing. Inside that nozzle is a valve the size of a coin. It has no electronics, no sensors, no computer chip telling it when to stop. It's pure mechanical genius, and it's been quietly running the same trick since before your grandparents were born. A tiny tube does everything. It runs the length of the nozzle, right along the spout, ending in a small hole near the tip. Nothing flows through it while gas is pouring. It just sits there, waiting. But when fuel finally rises high enough in your tank to cover that hole, everything changes. Air screaming through that hole a second ago suddenly can't get through anymore. Liquid blocks it, and that's the trigger. Behind that little tube sits a diaphragm, a thin rubber membrane connected to the valve. As long as air was rushing past, it kept the pressure behind the diaphragm low. The moment the hole gets blocked, pressure behind it drops instantly. A spring-loaded lever, held in place by that pressure, suddenly has nothing holding it back. Lever snaps, valve shuts. The whole valve slams shut in a fraction of a second. That's the click. That's the jolt in your hand. Not a computer, not a sensor. Just air, a tube, and a spring doing exactly what they were built to do. One man patented the fix. His name was Richard Corson, an engineer working through the problem in the 1930s, when fuel spills weren't a minor annoyance. They were a genuine hazard. Gas stations back then had a real fire problem. Spilling fuel was just normal, and every spill was a fire nobody could explain waiting to happen. Corson wasn't trying to invent something elegant. He was alone in that workshop, trying to stop people from getting hurt. What he landed on started with something almost silly. The story goes he got the idea after hearing a toilet flush, and it led him to a butterfly float mechanism that could shut off flow on its own. Years later, another engineer named Leonard Dewar would take a different approach, using the venturi effect, where fast-moving air through a narrow space creates a pressure drop, to build the diaphragm design that ended up in the nozzle you use today. It worked so well that almost nothing about the core design has changed since. Now, picture the fuel finally reaching that hole after a full tank. The whole valve slams shut, right on cue, 1 billion times a day, at every station on every highway on Earth. You never once think about it. It just happens. And the pump barely changed since then. Look closer next time, and you'll notice something else. Foam creeping toward the hole faster than the liquid itself, because gasoline foams as it splashes. The engineers accounted for that too. Even the shape of your tank, the angle of the filler neck, all of it is designed to work with this one small valve. So the click isn't a flaw. It isn't the pump being cautious. It's stopped on purpose, not accident. Engineered, tested, patented, and repeated for nearly a century without most drivers noticing it exists. And that's the open question finally answered. And nobody ever asked why, because it worked too well to draw attention to itself. If that surprised you even a little, hit like right now. It actually tells the algorithm to show this to more people who'd want to know this too. There's a second piece hiding in modern nozzles. Look at the rubber sleeve around the spout. catching fumes you'd have breathed otherwise. Those vapors are toxic, and for decades, they just drifted into the air over every gas station in the country. Compare an old station photo to today, and you can see the difference. Air you never noticed getting cleaner, city by city, because of a rubber boot that costs pennies to make. The man behind the original valve never became famous. Nobody remembers his name outside of a patent filing and a few engineering textbooks. No statue, no interviews, no headlines. Subscribe before you go. There's a lot more hiding in plain sight like this, and it's worth having around. But every single time that pump clicks off in your hand, his idea is still working exactly as designed, quietly saving your life.